welcome to Run with Purpose. This is episode number 41. And for those of you that are new to the show, my name is Flores, and I'm so very glad that you found this podcast. Would love for you to subscribe, and you can reach out to me on all of the socials at flores.run, and you can subscribe basically anywhere podcasts are found. And then we also have our video podcast that you can find on my YouTube page. You can see that information as well on my website at www.flores.run. If you do follow me on the socials, you may have seen that I was selected as part of Runnin' Rabbit's Rad Rabbit team. They call it the Runners and Dreamers team. And with that, you'll see a lot more coming up. Their gear is really, really good. So if you have not checked out any of their stuff, it is a little pricier than some stuff, but you're definitely getting the quality there compared to some other brands. So, but I'm not trying to sell their stuff right now. They don't pay me. But I reached out to the team Facebook page to find out stories, similar like I did with the Reddit program, or the Reddit reach out, trying to find out people that had stories and kind of just wanted to share them and give their insights, running with purpose, what have you. And our guest today was the first one that responded. Scott was the first person to respond and said, I'd be happy to join you on the podcast and tell some stories and talk about some stuff. So Scott, thanks for joining me on the show today.
No problem. Thank you for having me. I appreciate it. Yeah.
So if you could just let the people know a little bit about yourself, and then we'll get into it.
Yeah, sure. I've been running for about a year. I actually started last July of 2019, and did my first 5K in October, ended up running a half marathon in October, and then ran another one in...
Wait, I'm sorry. So you ran a 5K and then a half marathon in the same month?
No, like 4 weeks from each other.
Gotcha.
So I ran a 5K that supported Four Diamonds, their Conquer Run here in Hershey. And then my brother-in-law asked me about running for a group called the Association for Frontal Temporal Degeneration. It's something that he suffers from. And he was like, yeah, they have a 8K and they have a half and they have a full as part of Philadelphia Marathon weekend. I'm like, well, I'm not running a full. There's no way. And I said, I can run the 8K. That's no problem. He goes, well, 13 is my lucky number. I'm like, well, yes. So
yeah, well, now I have to do that.
Yeah. So I got suckered into running the half marathon, but it was awesome. It's like I caught the runner's bug, and then I ran Pittsburgh virtually this past spring, thanks to, the whole thing with COVID. Yeah. But, it's been an interesting journey. I have two kids as well, Tyler, who's 11, and Lottie, who's 9. Lottie actually ran the kids marathon as part of the Pittsburgh marathon weekend. She did that virtually. There was a Chick-fil-A kids marathon. So she's been getting the bug to do that.
Nice.
Yeah, I'm a special education teacher by trade, and I actually am one of the mini-thon advisors at our high school for the Four Diamonds Fund and their fight against pediatric cancer and raising money for research and awareness. So
cool. Well,
that's a little bit about who I am.
I'll have to grab that link from you from there so we can direct people over to that. Because obviously we want to support good causes and support people that are making a difference in the community. And we kind of talked about this before we started recording, but I wanted to get your thoughts kind of on how, as a teacher, how you are preparing / dealing / adjusting to like what this fall could be. Because I know it's a little different in Pennsylvania than it is in Ohio. Mm-hmm.
Well, let's go back to March of last school year. And it was actually the week before our mini-thon that we were supposed to have last year. And we were waiting all day to see what was happening as far as, case counts. There was a rumor that school was going to be closed for 2 weeks, and everyone's like, rumors, however they happen. And one of the biggest decisions we had to figure out was if we were going to cancel Pi Day, which is one of our big fundraisers for Mini-thon. Mm-hmm. So they ended up canceling that. But then towards the end of the day, we got an email saying, hey, just in case, take home about 2 weeks worth of stuff. And they said the same thing to the students. And sure enough, that afternoon, our Governor Wolf, got on and said, hey, schools are closed for 2 weeks, mm-hmm. and then we're going to reevaluate things. So that canceled our Mini-thon event. And we weren't really able to do much online yet because there was really no things set in place with the state that would allow us to do that, especially on the special education end of things. That's kind of what, from my understanding, held things up, because we had to be able to provide our services for our students like we would in the regular brick and mortar classroom.
Right.
So things like that had to get figured out. So after we did the 2 weeks of no school, well, not no school, but we were shut down while they were getting some things together, we had to do some enrichment activities. And then finally we got into the whole what do we call? I can't remember what we called it exactly, but we could get back into providing new content. So it was interesting for me because my role, I do a lot of tutoring with the kids, with my special ed students, and I do a lot of help with organizational skills and executive functioning skills. So I was basically on Zoom twice a day for an hour and a half with kids coming on, asking questions about homework and asking questions about their assignments that they were given. And it was definitely learn as you go almost, because it was really tough. It was like 1 minute, hey, we're in the building. Next minute, it's like, we're not coming back until next year. So Possibly. It was a stressful spring, but we got through it, and there was a lot of bumps in the road, but the kids responded well, the teachers responded well, and we just did the best that we could to make sure that we provided everything that we could for the kids.
Yeah. So then kind of going forward, what's the situation for the fall? I mean, I know we briefly talked about it beforehand, but I didn't want to load any answers.
Oh, sure. Well, when the summer started, we actually had a group that got together, a board of teachers, parents, students, administrators, healthcare professionals that were looking at different options of how we could open for the fall. And of course, there was the traditional, everybody's back in the building. You have everybody in regular classes. The second one was a hybrid model where you have half the alphabet come certain days of the week and the other half come another 2 days of the week. And then Friday would be all virtual. So that was another plan. And then obviously there was the full remote learning again. So those are our three options. In the district that I work for, we're actually starting with the hybrid model where kids from A through K will go Monday and Wednesday, and kids that are Tuesday and Thursday will go, kids with the last names L through Z, go through Tuesdays and Thursdays, and then everybody's home on Fridays.
Gotcha.
Doing virtual learning. So it's going to be a challenge, but again, I think we've prepped a lot better for the upcoming school year, and have had a lot of professional development this summer of how to teach remotely and have those situations not render their heads like they did in the spring, where it was kind of like on the go.
Yeah. Like you said, I mean, having like a 2-week notice basically of like, hey, we've got 2 weeks to figure out how we're going to take a full brick and mortar organization, to completely virtual. Like, how is that going to play out? So Ohio was a similar way. I think they were like, hey, we're going to take I think it was still 2 weeks. It was like, hey, we're going to take 2 weeks, and then it bumped up to spring break. So it was basically going to be a month. And then they were going to say, all right, you guys are coming back then. But I remember during the spring break time, they're just like, nah, that's not happening.
Yeah.
Sending everyone home.
That's kind of the same thing. That's kind of the same thing that happened with us. It was like, we're going to go for 2 weeks, shut everything down, get everything back to normal, or see if everything subsides. And then it turned into, hey, we're going to push it to after spring break. And then it was, hey, we're shutting down for the year.
Yeah.
But you could kind of see that coming. I mean, as you could see the number of cases rising in Pennsylvania, you saw the writing on the wall that there's no way that we're going to go back and finish this year out brick and mortar. And it was once they started canceling the spring sports and canceling all the events, it was like, yeah, there's no way. There's absolutely no way.
Yeah, I think they were probably holding on to it. I think they were trying to hold on to it for I was about to say for the seniors and stuff like that, trying to figure out something for them.
Yeah, and we ended up doing a graduation ceremony or a diploma pickup, and we had it split up into different time segments where kids through different parts of the alphabet would come, and teachers were spaced out, socially distanced, with masks on, had signs, noisemakers, all those types of things. Right. And we did that for the seniors. So they had some sort of graduation ceremony live. And we also put signs in all of the seniors' yards. Every single senior in our district got a sign put in their front lawn, like, hey, we're a Falcon, we're graduating this year. It was pretty cool. Yeah. And then we did a virtual graduation where we put together, a company put together a graduation ceremony for us, and that was put on YouTube, and that was broadcasted as a premiere event so families could watch it at home and do those kinds of things, which was neat. The students were able to do their speeches, like the valedictorian, salutatorian, things like that. So it was neat to see that and at least have something like that. Mm-hmm. I think you're going to see what the teachers were saying, though, was the diploma thing that we did. I think that's something that's going to become something that happens every year, because it was really cool to do that and have the parents and the kids come through. So maybe something like that will be consistent every year, as well as the traditional graduation.
Yeah, that could be a pretty cool thing. How many seniors are in the district? roughly?
So we have, I want to say that we're about 1,200 kids in the building. So a little over like 300, close to 300 seniors.
Gotcha.
So about 1,200 kids for the whole building. So we handed out all those diplomas in an afternoon. It was a long afternoon, but it was so worth it.
I was about to say, like,
to see the kids.
My graduating class of high school was like 780, and I couldn't imagine like having to do that with like 800 kids.
Yeah. Oh,
in South Florida at that too. So it'd have been like, 100 degrees in May. That would have been ideal.
Yeah, the only people that were wearing their caps and gowns were like the superintendent and the administrators and all the other teachers and everything were just around with their LD stuff on and their blue and white and just waving the colors around. And I felt so bad for the administrators. They were just sweating. It was bad. It was so hot. And then it started raining at one point. It rained for like 10 minutes. It was right towards the end of when we were done. So at least it wasn't in the middle.
Yeah.
It was like, oh man, to cool this off a little bit, but then we were kind of miserable for the last part. But just seeing the kids made it all that much better.
Yeah. That's awesome. That's awesome. Thanks for going off that little detour for me. I was more of a curiosity kind of thing.
No worries.
So Scott and I were kind of talking beforehand of like what we wanted this episode to be and kind of what we wanted to talk about, and mental health kept coming up. I think we've talked about a couple of different things, but like mental health is kind of wrapped into that. So I guess we'll just start it off of like, what are your like overall thoughts, I guess, with like running and mental health and how all of that can help it. That's a bad way of putting it. How running and mental health can kind of be positive for each other.
Sure. I forget what movie it was, but like there's someone character is like, endorphins make you happy and running releases those endorphins. And for me, education is a stressful job, hands down. And I find that using running to help with like my own personal anxiety, it's been a huge help. I mean, like I said, I've only been running for about a year, but I definitely felt this school year that I wasn't as cranky, so to speak, to use an easier term. But I wasn't as cranky, and it was the year seemed to flow better because I was able to go on a run after school if I had a really bad day, and it was like I could just let it all go, and it was kind of like left on the pavement,
Yeah.
And I think more people you see talk about that on social media. I mean, I've seen posts or stories on Instagram where people are like, running has helped me because, and they go into their story of either they had depression or anxiety or suicidal thoughts. And they found that running and just working out in general has helped them find purpose. And when I started running last summer, I was so unhealthy. Like it was bad. And I wanted to not only just fix my mental health or make myself my mental health better, but my physical health as well. So I was actually riding bike and I'm like, man, I could do this in half the time and go for like a mile run and I'd be so much better. I'd have more I'd have more time in the day to do things.
Right.
And then I went on that first mile run. I'm like, oh my God, why did I do this? This is the dumbest idea ever. But you keep getting yourself out there. Like they say, the first step to doing something is taking that first step or running that first step. And after you kind of get into that groove, I never wanted to stop and I never wanted to look back. So I know that there's kids out there that there's a documentary on Amazon that I watched that was all about running and mental health. I'll have to look up search the name of it up the name of it, but it was really good. And it's this whole group of kids that go through this therapy program, and part of their therapy program is running, and it helps them with their mental health. And it's a really, really cool thing.
Yeah. You have to send me that so I can take a look at that. I don't think I've seen that one. Amazon has so many good like little documentaries and stuff like that. I'm like, thank you for making my Prime membership like worth it. Yeah.
I want to say it might be called Running RX. It's called RX Run.
Okay.
As I take them. Yep, that's it. So RX Run on Prime Video.
Writing that down. RX Run. Yeah, we'll have to check that out. One thing you said that kind of aligns with a lot of things that I say with things is the first step is like the first step you take out the door and that sort of thing. And I always tell people when people ask me, how I run the way I do or the distances I do or any of that stuff, like, how can you do that? And I'm like, it's one step at a time. Like, that's all it is. Right. I focus on each step. because if I try to get too far ahead of myself, I'm going to be discouraged or, probably get hurt because I'm not paying attention to the step I'm currently in. So, figuratively of like the step of the journey, but also like, no, literally if I'm running, I'm focusing on each step. Where is that foot going to land every single time? Because, we've all had those little falls or those accidents where you're like, oh shit, if I would have just like paid attention to the crack in the sidewalk, I wouldn't be face planted into the dirt right now. Or if
I would have paid attention to that pain coming from my hamstring, I wouldn't have been shut down for a bunch of months.
Yeah, we'll get into that because I think that I always like hearing people's stories of their thing, because I know right now, like my ankle's kind of bummed. I bruised my toe pretty bad. I did some surfing lessons a couple weeks ago in California, and I've never surfed. Like I lived in Florida for most of my life, and never surfed because, there's sharks in the water. People in Florida don't go in the water. The people in the water are the tourists that don't realize the sharks will kill you. But since I was in California, I was like, well, I'm out here. I kind of like, my buddy was like, hey, do you want to do surf lessons? I'm like, well, obviously this is like surfing place. And I was up on the board, fell off the board as beginners do. And like my toe kind of like just went straight down and like jammed in the sand, but just like the first knuckle. That's it.
Oh, that's the worst.
Yeah. So like right below the toenails, like bruised really bad. And I'm like, it's been like 3 weeks now. And I'm like, it still bothers me, but I have like that. I've got like my ankles hurting a little bit, and I've got like shoulder and neck pains, all this stuff. And to everyone else's credit, they've told me, hey, go to a doctor. And I'm like, the problem is they're going to tell me not to run, and I'm not going to listen. So why am I paying for it? But we'll get into that. I don't want to get into that right
now. Nail on the head.
Yeah, but it is a good thing there. So I think you kind of hit the nail on the head with the benefits of running for mental health. I feel the same way of, I just feel better after a run. If I'm having a bad morning or a slow morning, I'm like, I don't really need to get out. I can do it tomorrow. I kind of like force myself to get out the door. This morning was that. Usually I wake up, I read, and then I run. And I felt myself, because I took a rest day yesterday, I felt myself just like a little bit just like, maybe I'll just lay back down. And I was like, nope. I literally got up and I was out the door at 5:40, and I'm like, I'm running right now. This is, I'm not dealing with this. And the whole day I felt better. But have you thought, running for a year, you've probably seen a little bit of the ups and downs already, but have you seen possibly like some negative effects to like mental health, or that breakdown as far as like running or racing? It's tough for racing now because none of us are actually doing real races. But is there anything that you've seen that's kind of been like a negative side of that?
When the injury that we'll get into, then when I was told like I couldn't run, that's when it really started hitting me. He's like, that's my thing. Like, that's what I need to do. Like, you can't tell me I can't run. How am I going to release stress? Like, how am I going to do that? How can I do that? And trying to find other ways in order to get rid of that stress or work, not fix my anxiety, but help decrease it. And it's like, man, like I have to do this. You can't tell me I can't do this, because then I have nothing to do. So, that was tough. And, I also play drums. I play drums in a cover band, but I can't just go and set up my drums at my apartment, because my neighbors will, they'll be knocking on the door with torches and pitchforks ready to burn the place down.
I can't even play my guitar in my apartment without people wanting to do that. So I can't imagine drums.
Oh no, there's no way. And I have so much. The drummer's the worst. Like he's the one that takes the longest to set up, the longest to tear down,
the biggest crybaby.
He's the first one there and the last one to leave. That's just how it is, no matter what the situation. But no, it's tough. Like as far as the injury aspect goes, like when you're told you can't do something that you finally found that you enjoy doing, it's hard. Like I went to PT and they're like, yeah, you can't run for a while. Like you need to take a break.
What did you end up doing?
What's that?
What did you end up hurting yourself? How, rather?
Well, so got to go back to the fall. And I used to teach a physical science class. And every year, the physics teacher has this hovercraft that you use a leaf blower and you put this on this disc and it inflates this disc. And if you can picture this, you sit on a chair and they push you down this ramp and you go flying down the hallway. So he's like, oh, do it one more time, for old time's sake. I'm like, sure, why not? What's the worst that could happen? So I jump on this thing. I have my helmet on. I'm filming it. And I go down, and he kind of twisted me when he started me down the ramp. And as I was going down the hallway, I kind of leaned back a little bit, and I just caught the edge of it, which caused friction. And when you have friction, it causes you to fall. So yeah, friction won that day, and I landed square on my tailbone, like right on the point of my tailbone. And at first I didn't really think anything of it. I'm like, oh, it's just, I'll be fine. Like, it's just pain from running. And ended up seeing our school trainer, and she was, after a few times that I had gone to see her, she's like, I think you need to go see our pelvic floor specialist. I'm like, wait a minute, like, pelvic floor, like that's for ladies. Like, what do I need to go see that for? She goes, I just think an evaluation would be good. So I get there, and this is now 6 weeks after the initial injury. 6 weeks. Oh, wow. I waited 6 weeks to finally like go see somebody. And the pelvic floor lady's like, all right, I'm going to do an assessment. And she did what was called a percussion test on my tailbone, where she they put it like one finger on like the tip of your tailbone, and they tap it with their other finger. And I almost jumped off the table. She's like, oh yeah, you broke your tailbone. And I'm like, well, I have the half in like 2 weeks. Am I allowed to run this? She goes, you've been running on it for 6 weeks. She goes, you can run the half, but you're done after the half. Like, you need to take a break.
At least they said you could run that. And not that you wouldn't have listened.
Exactly. So I went and ran the half, and my goal was to run under 2 hours, like for my first half. I was like, under 2 hours. That's what I want to do. Ended up running it in like an hour and 39.
Oh shit.
And some change. Yeah. So I went back and I told her, she's like, oh my God, like, why did you do that? I'm like, it just happened. I didn't like force myself to do it. And, she started putting me through the program, and I took a few weeks off, and I was showing progress, but it just, to me, it was the soreness that I had was from the exercises. No, it was still, everything was jacked up, and my hamstrings were a little messed up too, because fast forward to after Pittsburgh, after that virtual, I ended up going to do a gait analysis finally, and they were finding that I was overstriding, and I was doing all this other stuff, which the hamstring injury wasn't even related to the tailbone injury. It was just something else that had creeped in there too. So I really shouldn't have ran Pittsburgh, but in my mind, I'm like, oh, I'm fine. That pain's just from running. It's nothing. I'll just stretch more. That was even doing more damage than not stretching at all. So yeah, it's a vicious cycle. But once you find something that you enjoy doing, and then you're finally told like, hey, you need to take some time off of it, it's like, well, no, then what am I going to do to fill that time frame? Like, I can't do that. That's nuts. You can't tell me I can't do it.
Right. And to your point, it's not only it's something that you found that you like doing, it's something that, as we just talked about, of how it helps you physically and mentally. Like that mental thing where you're talking about, it helped like with your anxiety and with anything there. When you don't do those things, your brain's like, I need to be filled with something. And you know what it's going to fill it with? It's going to fill it back to the old tendencies of stuff that you had prior. And you can kind of get into those, like, for lack of a better term, like old demons, if you will, of like things come back that you're just like, crap, like here we go again. And it's like, you knew how hard you worked to get to where you were. And now it just feels like you're taking steps backwards, when in reality, I should listen to it. And if I had anything really bothering me, I probably would go to the doctor. Most of my ailments are, and probably the same thing you said, it's like, it's just running, it's sore. And it's like, it's kind of that kind of thing, but it's one of those where, I don't know. It's because it helps you in so many different aspects. It's not just something I enjoy doing. Like, I enjoy going for runs, but when I can't run, like last year, 2 years ago, I had surgery and I couldn't run for a month. And at this point, I mean, I've been running, I talked about this yesterday. I've been running since 2000. I did my first half in 2010. So I've been running since 2010. So I've been running for a decade. And there's only been like 2 times that I've been quote unquote hurt. And one time I just ignored it. And this last time I actually took a full month of 0 running at all. And I thought I was going to lose my damn mind.
Oh yeah, I know. And see, part of the thing is that I talked to my PT about when I started going for my hamstrings this past spring, was, I'm new to this. I don't know the difference between injured and sore. Like, I don't know what that difference is. My body doesn't know that yet. So I ended up going to my family doctor while I was training for Pittsburgh, and he wrote me a script to go to PT, but then COVID happened and everything got shut down. And I wasn't able to get back in there until after I was done with the half. So I was like, oh, well, I can't go see PT, so I might as well just keep training. And ended up running the half and then going to see the PT. And I had hamstring tendinopathy. So it's like high hamstring issue. And he's like, yeah, we're going to shut you down. He said, so no running. I'm like, oh. But he goes, but I'm going to give you stuff to do to help strengthen that stuff. So when you get back to running, you're in better shape and you're building that core. So I was doing those programs. And then the first thing I did, it was Labor Day weekend, like Memorial Day weekend. Sorry, I always get those two mixed up. I do it all the time. But that was my first run I was allowed to do. And I was allowed to do interval runs. And I could run for 2 minutes, walk for a minute, and I could only run for a total of 10 minutes. Okay. But I was like, yes, you can do something. But you get into that groove, like you finally getting into a groove while you're running for those 2 minutes. And it's like, oh, the timer goes off and you have to stop. It's like, all right, here we go. Walk for a minute. And then you get back into it. And that went on for a few weeks, but it was awesome just to be able to run some again. Like you're finding that filling that void again. And then he pushed it up to like 5 minutes. And then we started doing 5Ks. So like last week was the first time I ran three 5Ks in 1 week since April. So it's been a long process. And I was allowed to run 4 miles yesterday, which was, what's today? Tuesday. Yeah. Monday. I ran 4 miles yesterday, and then I have a 5K run tomorrow. And then I'm actually running in a real race. Like there's an actual physical race happening in my state on Saturday. So it's the Pirate Run 5K or 10K. I'm doing the 5K. I can't run anything farther than that right now, which is fine. Yeah. And they're doing staggered starts. Like the 10K starts at 8, and then the 5K will start at 8:20. Nice. And that's on City Island here in Harrisburg. Okay. But yeah, it's building that process back up and getting back into it was challenging again. And I could tell like my fitness, like the first time I ran an entire 5K without stopping and walking for a minute, it was awful. Like my body was like, hey, jerkbag, like, why are you doing this to us again?
Yeah. We went through this. You did this, and we told you, hey, we don't want you to do this anymore. And now you took time off, and now you're back at stop this shit.
Yeah, knock it off. We don't like it. But it's amazing just trying to fix the form and focusing on that. You find other ways to, while you're running now, to help with not replacing what you were doing before, but to help you.
Yeah, like a supplementing.
Yeah, supplementing. Thank you. And, I found that my form's been better. Like I got one of the Running Dynamics pods to connect to my Garmin, which just clips onto your back and hangs in the middle. And some of the things I found that I was oscillating too high. Like I was basically bouncing, like it was like running on moon shoes, and I was jumping instead of, running with a regular cadence and running to a metronome. Like I started doing that to help with.
That is a game changer.
Yeah. And it sucks. It sucks, especially when it's 95 degrees outside and you're in your last. Yes. Yeah. And it's just bing, 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 right in your head the whole time. And, you have your music going and you have the metronome going and your feet are getting all jacked up. But it's just awesome to be able to get back into doing it again.
Yeah. It's funny you said a race. Like I've been jonesing for a race. I had marathons, and the last one was March 1st. I did one on that weekend, and I've had 6 canceled since then. So I've got my next one, and the last one I have scheduled for the year is in Nebraska. And they sent an email like 2 days ago of like, this is happening. There's like 400 total runners, like in the half and full combined. And they're like, it's in the middle of nowhere, Nebraska. Like it's going to be like, we're going to do a staggered start. It's going to be great. Everyone's going to have to wear face masks like on the bus. And I'm like, that's fine. I just want to race. Like, that's all I want to do. That's all I've been like the entire year. It's like I trained for, I was going to do a charity bib for Boston. And because of that, like I have such respect for the race. I didn't want to, knowing that I didn't qualify for it, I didn't want to show up and just run like a crap race, like just to run it to say I ran it. Like I was like, no, I'm going to make Boston my PR. Like I'm going to run my shit, and that's what what's going to happen. And like I was in the best shape that I've been, but like since then, every single race has been canceled. And I ran like a virtual one around here, and got a personal best with the distance, but at the same point, it's like, it wasn't a race. So, how can I do this? And the whole time I'm like waiting for the race. And it's like, it goes back to that mental health aspect of it was driving me nuts for a little while I felt like I was spinning my wheels and nothing was happening, and it wasn't anything I could control. Like, it wasn't like I kept doing races and kept not hitting times. There literally just was not races for me to do. So I can see that as possibly like another negative mentally, is you kind of get that, I don't want to say like an addict, but it's the same kind of, probably the same things are happening in your head of like, you're used to these endorphins or these hormones or any of this stuff happening to your body, and then you're not getting it, and your body's like, whoa, what's going on? Like, this isn't what you do. You don't just not do these runs, or you don't do these distances kind of thing. So
yeah. Well, and to your point there, when they canceled Pittsburgh this spring, they gave you the virtual option. Like, oh yes, perfect. I'm still going to do it. I've been training since February. I'm just going to do it, run it, and then I'm going to take a break and take some time off. And one of my really good friends, Michael, he runs. He did the Flying Pig Marathon this past spring virtually, and he set up his own course here in Hershey, PA. And he helped me. Well, he basically made my course for me and for my half. And it started in Hershey and looped the whole way around through Hershey. And the last mile, one of the last miles, I was up like this hill, like this huge, like progressive hill. I'm like, man, you must really hate me or something. But like, I ran.
You're trying to imitate Pittsburgh, because Pittsburgh was a pain in the ass.
Yes. So he's like, well, I got to give you some hills because you're not going to experience them in Pittsburgh. So I ended up PRing for the distance. But at what cost? Like, then I was really, really hurt. Like, I got up the next morning and I'm like, okay, I'm just going to do a mile just to kind of shake the legs out. And I almost didn't make it through that mile. Like, it was the slowest mile I ran since last July. I think it was like 11 something that the whole mile was. And just the whole time my legs like, no, you got to stop. You have to stop. And by the end, I was just basically walking this loop just to get it done. But you were talking about races being canceled, and I actually signed up to run Philly again for AFTD, and unfortunately Philly got canceled. All events in Philly got canceled until July 1st, I think is what they said. So that one's not happening, but I did sign up for this one called the End of the Road Half Marathon, which is actually on an old extension of the Pennsylvania Turnpike through the old tunnels. So you have to wear like a headlamp in order to run the race. But so that one's going to happen. But again, it's a staggered start with a morning and an afternoon group. And they're limiting it to 250 people per flight. And actually some of our RAD members are running that race as well. So shout out to them.
Sweet. Yeah, I think this group's going to be a cool thing. I think it's going to be interesting in these times with being accepted to this group and doing all this stuff where we don't have races to meet people. Really, relatively. So we don't have that extra bit. So I think it's like the communication we've been doing is been really good, like in the group and stuff like that, to try to, build some relationships or something like that. And another reason why I'm just reaching out for the podcast, like, who wants to talk to me? I need more friends to talk to.
Well, and even someone posted today about doing the Thon 5K, which is in October, helping others, like bringing us all together to help other people. Like that's something that I really enjoy about this. It's not just the running aspect of things, but the networking and meeting these people at this point. But, there's people that signed up for Pittsburgh or are going to sign up for Pittsburgh. So I'll have the opportunity to possibly meet them this coming spring if Pittsburgh happens. So these kind of groups and joining this type of stuff is pretty awesome, because you do meet a lot of cool people. Like this is awesome that you do this podcast and we're able to chat like this. So it's pretty neat. I've enjoyed it so far, and I can't wait to see what the rest of the year brings.
Yeah, I think that community aspect of being able to, everyone has their story. For whatever it is, whether it could just be I wanted to be healthy and I chose this as a fitness activity, or this is what I did growing up kind of thing, or it's, hey, I know someone that has some sort of ailment and I first got introduced to this because of X, Y, and Z, trying to help support them or support the cause and that sort of thing. And I think it's super interesting to hear other people's stories, because it kind of gives you that perspective of something like, hey, I didn't know that was a thing, or as big of a thing, or that it was a thing that needed as much support as it gets. And I think that kind of back and forth is the whole reason I do this show, is to meet people and find out kind of what drives people. Because if I can find out there, then it helps me grow, makes me more aware of what's going on, rather than just sitting in Columbus, Ohio going, everything is hunky dory. Our governor just keeps having negative test after negative test after a positive test.
Well, and the thing is, the whole notion of, helping people out, like there's, people post in the group every day, this was my run today, and this was how long I went, and this is what, that for me, it's like, yeah, see, I want to get back to that, or I want to be like running that distance again. And for myself, I always post like, hey, I'm still hurt, but I was able to run today, and this is what I was able to do. And other people are posting on that too and commenting like, hey, I went through it, just keep pushing. Like the positive support that you get from people just from doing that helps with the mental health thing as well. Like it's that external stuff that really can help you too. Like having those people just say, hey, you're going to get there. You just need to take your time and listen to your body and trust the process. Like that's been my mantra since all this started, was just trust the process. Because if you do, you're going to get back to it. So I definitely feel that this is a very positive group, and it's been very helpful as well through this whole thing.
Yeah, the community has been probably a big mental health aspect that people have been missing, not even just running, just in general. We talk about with school age kids, not being able to see their friends as much. Maybe they still hang out if they're in the neighborhood or something like that, but maybe not seeing their friends, hanging out with their friends and having that interaction that's not more than just a screen. Like I love doing interviews, but I'd rather somebody be right here on the other side of this desk and me talking to them rather having to do it through a camera. And same thing with work. I mean, 100% of my work, I sit at this desk 5 days a week, really 7 days a week, but 5 days a week for the corporate purpose. But like going and just sitting and talking to people through screens and not really leaving, not really doing anything, and missing that community. I was talking to somebody about this the other day, about school age kids specifically, of what this is going to do to those growing up in this circumstance, because this is going to be around for a little bit, whether it's 100% virtual or it's a hybrid for a while. This isn't going to be something that just like disappears. And because of that, what are we going to see as a society? How are those norms going to change, and how is that going to affect those that are still developing mentally? To know what that means, especially with the issues you already deal with bullying and social media and all of that kind of stuff. Yeah. Like now, like I can't even imagine where everything you do is going to be posted online somewhere more than ever before, because that's your only way to communicate with people. So how are people going to, handle that?
Well, that was a big thing that popped up in the spring, where it was, the mental health of the kids being at home, having to do this online, the anxiety levels of them. I mean, this was not easy. And some kids like didn't have internet access at home. And that was a whole other thing that you have to look at. And we just had training as part of our professional development for the summer called SSET training. And it was basically, it's a mental health thing. Like, how can you help kids like facing their fears, facing anxieties, it's all mental health training that we got because it's something we're going to face for the extended period of time throughout this whole COVID thing. And, there's kids that are on the football team, because I'm a football coach, so to speak. I deal with all the equipment and all the technology as far as like trading all the film and everything, but that's in limbo right now. We don't even know if we're going to have a season. Like the conference that the school that I teach at plays in just last week said, okay, we're just doing conference play. We're not doing any crossover games. Like we're going to push back the start of football for 2 weeks, or all sports from the mid-pen for 2 weeks. And we'll go from there. But it's like, you see these schools then that have kids that are either exposed to the coronavirus or kids test positive. It's like, how these kids are worried that their seasons are going to be canceled. My heart breaks for them, because some of them already lost their spring sports,
right? And
now some of them are going to lose their fall sports as seniors, and they're not going to be able to do it again unless they push it to the spring. But I don't even know how that's possible.
Yeah, especially in like grade age school kids, it's, you can't really, most of those kids are multi-sport athletes. So you can't be like, hey, we're pushing football to the spring. By the way, choose football or baseball.
Right. Or if they like stagger it, you have winter sports for a certain period of time, and then the fall sports and then you do the spring sports, like do them all out of order.
Yeah,
but it's crazy. I mean, and then there's the debate. Well, if we can't have football, we can still do this sport because it's like cross country, because you can't do that to kids. Like you can't just, in my opinion, and I know it's not going to be popular, but it's like, you can't just pick and choose which sports are going to go.
No, I mean,
the Big Ten today just announced they're not going to have any sports.
Oh, did they?
And that's one of they're not doing anything this fall. So that decision came out.
I thought I heard cries around all of Columbus, Ohio when that happened.
Yeah.
I could care less about college sports, so I just give everyone here crap. Like whoever Ohio State plays, I wear the opposing team's colors every week.
See, you just became my best friend. I can't stand Ohio State. Sorry.
That's okay.
But no, I feel for these kids. And one of the things that we've been doing is for our morning workouts, like every kid has to fill out a questionnaire. Like, have you been around anyone that's been COVID positive? Have you had these symptoms? All those things. They have to fill it out every day. They come in, they wear masks. All the coaches have to wear masks for the entire practice. And as the kids are engaged, they don't have to wear their masks. But when they have downtime, they got to put them back on and things like that if they're transitioning or whatever. But, these kids have been working since we were able to start this. It was sometime in July. I can't remember if it was after. It was definitely after 4th of July. But, all these different plans got put into place and were approved by the state and approved by the school board. So the kids got that glimmer of hope that they're going to be able to do this. And then the governor says, he thinks that they shouldn't have sports until 2021 just because of the risks and everything and the stakeholders and that could be affected. It's like, man, you just take the wind right out of the sails of everything. And that's where that mental health comes in and affects those kids that way. Cause it's like you get them to that highest high, as you've probably experienced with the running thing. Like you get up there and then it's like one little thing happens and it drops you the whole way down and you can't focus on anything but, everything's canceled. So I'm done. Like, that's it. I can't do anything.
And there's probably a lot of the kids too that, for not a great reason, but a lot of people think like, hey, football's going to be my way I'm getting to college, or football's going to be, just to pick on football because it's coming up a football season, but
right.
Whatever insert sport here is going to be the reason I get into college or can get a scholarship into college. In some of these cases, it can help, if families can't afford to send their kids to school, or, you don't want them to be in just insane amount of debt. That's a whole nother conversation as far as our education system. But you have a lot of that. And it's like, hey, if all of my value is in me being able to do this thing and now I can't do this thing, as a 33-year-old guy, I can kind of adjust those feelings. I have, the mental capacity to have it. But you tell me that at 16 years old, I don't know if I handled it the same way.
Right. No, absolutely. The developing brain for our high school kids, it's a completely different mindset. It's like, last year kids lost prom, they lost graduation, they lost spring sports, they lost this. Well, now it's the fall and they're going to, homecoming, sports seasons, all that kind of stuff, those big gatherings, the beginning of the school year activities where you get back with your friends, like the first day of school. I mean, that's going to be completely different. And that's weighing on kids' minds. It's like, well, now I'm not going to be with Johnny for all intents and purposes. I'm not going to be with Johnny first day of school and he's going opposite days. So I'm not going to be able to sit with him at lunch and I'm not going to be in the same math class with him until we all go back. It's hard. And that's a lot of stressors on these kids on top of everything else that school already brings.
Yeah.
And it's going to be interesting to see how things play out. My hope is, that we're able to get back full time at some point this year. It's just a matter of when.
Yeah. And that's the crazy part with all of this stuff is no one has the correct answer because there isn't one. It's just let's hope this is going to work. We're not going to please everybody. Let's just try to do the best we can with the information we have. And
it's a lot of hurry up and wait. It's a lot of hurry up and wait with things. So and even if you come out with a plan, a perfect example, like one of the plans that we had in place, we had a meeting ready to go, submitted it, and then all of a sudden, bang, they released other recommendations. It's like, okay, well, now we got to go back to the drawing board and redo what we had already put down. So, and I think you're going to see a lot of that for the foreseeable future of things that are going to happen. Yeah. Another thing that they were talking about with these fall sports is no spectators.
That's just weird as far as school's concerned. Like the professionals, I mean, it still sucks for them. Like I've seen some of the baseball games and I'm like, that can't be fun to play in like a giant, like NBA, it's small enough. You can hear things. It's like people playing ball on a street. It's fine. But like you never played baseball like just by yourself with no one watching kind of thing. I can't imagine like a school sport being that way, like where the parents can't come or they even limit how many. That's just...
Yeah, I don't know. It's, and then, but there's also ways for people to view it, like live streaming games and things like that. And with the technology being there, but again, that costs money. And right now it's, do you want to spend that kind of money to do these things? But it's a catch-22, right? Like you're damned if you do and damned if you don't, but it's what's more important, the safety,
right,
and well-being of everybody, or the sport. And unfortunately that's the conundrum everybody's in right now. So I said to my principal the one day, like, you couldn't pay me enough to be a principal or a superintendent right now.
No way.
You guys are just getting it all from every angle, and I feel so awful for them. And they're doing the best they can. Like that's what's really tough here is they don't have all the answers. They can't. No one does, but they seem to get the brunt of it. So
yeah, people need someone to blame and to point the finger to, because they don't want to point the finger at themselves. Again, that's probably a whole nother topic idea, but because I knew I did that for a long time. And it's just, you have to own your stuff. Like, hey, this is me, or this is the situation I'm in, make the best of it. We can't control, I always say we can't control what happens to us, but we can control how we react to it.
Correct.
And that's it. Like that, period. End of story, and if you want to react a certain way, that's on you, and you can't really project that to somebody else. But yeah, those people, thank you for anyone that's in those roles or doing that, or having to deal with this, whether it's nurses in hospitals or any of emergency services or teachers or anyone there. Thank you guys so much for everything you're doing through this, because I sit at a computer all day. So
well, my favorite comment, people are like, well, what are you going to do? Like, what do you mean? What am I going to do? I'm going to go to work. Like, right. I'm going to go there every day and do what I need to do to make sure I'm providing for the kids that I have in class. And when the kids sign on during the day to check in for me to take attendance, I'm going to work with them as much as possible. So, I'm not running away from what I love to do. Like, teaching is there's a reason I got into teaching, and people are like, oh, you get your summers off. Great. Awesome. But that's not why I got into it. Like, right. I got into it for the kids, and, my summers, are part of what I do is professional development. Like, I need to learn new things that are coming up. And last year, when I transitioned to this role as like the resource teacher, I had to look at how can I run a resource room, and how do I have to, learn all the maths again, because I forgot how to do algebra 2, and reteaching myself how to do that, and chemistry and physics. Oh boy. But it was fun, and it's a new challenge, and I enjoy it. So it's like, I'm not putting aside the fact that yes, there's a possibility that I could get sick, because it could happen, but I'm going to go and do what I need to do to make sure that these kids are doing all right, and working on making sure that they're stable and their mental health is taken care of, and we're helping them out as much as possible.
Well, we appreciate it. And I say we as a collective, because I don't have any children, but yes. Scott, great conversation. I appreciate it, man.
Oh, no problem. It was a pleasure.
Yeah. So how can folks connect with you if they want to pick your brain about some more stuff about how to continue running while you're injured?
Well, you can find me on Instagram at Scoots, SCOOTS 231. That's also my Twitter handle too. And then I'm on Facebook.
Yeah,
but
we'll find it. I'll link your Instagram and Twitter on the in the show notes here, so people, you can just check the show notes and you can get all of his details there, and you can reach out to him.
Yeah, I look forward to it. Thank you for having me on. I really appreciate it.
Cool, man. Yeah, and to everyone else, you guys know the deal. You know how we end this show. You can reach out to me on social media everywhere at flores.run. Would love if you subscribe to the podcast, leave a review. A text-based review helps the algorithms and all of that fun jazz to make sure people can find the show, and it kind of just gets through the weeds of, obviously there's a lot of podcasts out there. There's a lot of really great podcasts out there, but if you like hearing interviews such as today's or the past few weeks, and I've got a couple ones coming up in the next few weeks, great talks. Definitely share it with people, but leave that review. It helps other people find it. You can visit my website at www.flores.run. Just recently updated it, put all of the podcast interviews in there. So you have one stop shop for all of those. So you don't have to go to the YouTube page, which is super cool. Films are on there. Chasing Heartbreak, as you guys heard with last week with Mike. You can check that out as well. Race recaps, everything's there. Hopefully I can run in September in Nebraska. But thank you so much for joining me today. Remember to keep running with purpose, one step at a time. We'll see you next week.